There is something very strange that few Americans dare to say. The longer people stay inside a stable system, the more exhausted they become. Not because of lack of money, not because of lack of opportunity, but because everything is measured by time, bills, and the pressure to always keep moving forward. What very few people know is this. With a U.S. passport, you are not only allowed to travel, but you can legally live in other countries for 6 months, 1 year, or even longer, without begging, without racing against visa deadlines. And when you regain time, you begin to realize what you have been missing all along is not a place to escape to, but a place that allows you to stay with dignity. Dream it. Pack it. Go. 5. Albania. 12 months without visa, a different life in Europe. There is a truth that very few Americans know. They can live in Albania for a full 12 consecutive months without a visa, without extensions, without complicated procedures, and without the pressure to leave after a few months, as in many other countries. 1 full year, long enough not just to visit, but to truly live, adapt, and view life at a slower rhythm. What surprises many people is that Albania is located in Europe, a place often assumed to be expensive and difficult to access. But when you set foot here, the first feeling is not overwhelm, but a very clear sense of lightness, as if life around you automatically lowers its volume so you can breathe more deeply. Many Americans arrive in Albania thinking they will just try it for a few months, then decide later. Yet it is the slow rhythm of life. The mornings that begin at a familiar neighborhood cafe, where the owner smiles and remembers your order after just a few visits, along with the quiet afternoons watching the sea or the mountains from the balcony of a small apartment, that gradually make them forget the feeling of always having to chase time like before. The cost of living in Albania is what makes many people rethink the idea of Europe being expensive. With about $1,000 a month, many Americans live here not by cutting back, but comfortably, with enough to eat out, enough for daily needs, and enough to enjoy life. Rent for a clean, well-equipped one-bedroom apartment in a livable area is often only around $400, while food hardly requires a second thought when a full local meal costs about $7. So cheap that many people pause for a few seconds the first time, just to make sure they heard it right. Living longer in Albania. What surprises many people is not only the cost, but the sense of security when it comes to health. Going to see a doctor is no longer a heavy financial or emotional decision. Private clinics are easy to access, procedures are simple, and the feeling of being treated like a human being rather than a file makes many Americans realize how accustomed they had become to medical pressure before. When night falls, Albania offers a rare sense of peace. People walk, talk, sit outdoors without constantly being on guard. Locals are naturally friendly, not overly curious, not distant, and gradually begin to treat you as a familiar part of the neighborhood, rather than just a foreigner who comes and goes. Albania is at a very special moment. Developed enough for foreigners to live comfortably with stable internet and essential services, yet not so overwhelmed by mass tourism and aggressive investment that everything has become expensive and crowded. Places like this in the modern world rarely exist for long before losing their natural balance. One American once said that in the United States, he always felt he was slowing down compared to the world. But in Albania, he felt the world slow down to wait for him. And perhaps the most thought-provoking thing is not leaving the United States, but realizing that you could have been living more gently for a long time already. Albania gives Americans 1 year without a visa, without pressure, without demanding immediate decisions. Just a stretch of time long enough for you to remember what it feels like to live a life that truly feels like living before choosing your next step. If you ever thought Europe was something luxurious and not meant for you, Albania might be the place that makes you rethink. Would you dare to spend 1 year living slowly in Europe, just to see how life might change? 4. Georgia. 1 year visa-free, freedom among nature and ancient culture. The next country is Georgia, and it must be made clear right from the start. This is not the state of Georgia in the United States. Georgia is a small country located between Europe and Asia, where layers of ancient history are still present in everyday life. And it is also one of the very few countries in the world that allow Americans to stay a full year without a visa, without extensions, without complicated procedures. 1 full year, without being pressured by the calendar, without counting down the days to leave. If Albania brings a sense of calm and Costa Rica speaks of returning to a slower rhythm of life, then Georgia offers a completely different experience. Georgia is not gentle in a relaxing way, but free in a powerful and very real way. This is a place where you clearly feel that you are living amid history, nature, and a culture that has not been flattened to please tourists. Georgia does not try to become comfortable, and it is precisely this that makes many Americans feel respected as mature individuals. The capital, Tbilisi, expresses this spirit most clearly. This city carries a strange blend of old and new, where ancient stone streets and traditional wooden balconies coexist with small cafes, fast internet, and a pace of life well suited for remote workers. You can sit for hours in a cafe watching people pass by, undisturbed, unhurried, and feel very clearly that you are living in a city with depth, not a tourist stage. The cost of living in Georgia is low enough that you no longer have to stress over rent or food, yet not cheap in a way that feels makeshift or lacking in quality. Life here brings a simple sense of sufficiency, where you can live comfortably without needing to prove that you are living well to anyone. For many Americans, this is the first time in a long while that money no longer feels like the center of every decision. Georgian cuisine is a very important part of social life. Meals are not just for being full, but for sitting together, sharing, and connecting. Hot cheese-filled bread, grilled meats, fresh vegetables, and traditional wine always come with stories and laughter. Georgia is considered the cradle of wine, with a history of more than 8,000 years. And here, wine is not for showing off, but for bringing people closer together. Many Americans say they have never felt such clear social connection anywhere else. Safety in Georgia is very evident in everyday life. Street crime is low, people are friendly, and police presence is visible without creating a sense of control. You can walk in the evening, use public transportation, live a normal life without constantly being on guard. For those accustomed to living in tense environments, this creates a very real sense of freedom. The healthcare system in Georgia also provides reassurance for foreigners. Private hospitals are easy to access, costs are reasonable, and the approach is straightforward, without unnecessary complexity. Healthcare is no longer something you postpone or worry about excessively, but becomes a normal part of life. And then there is Georgia's nature. The majestic Caucasus Mountains, vast valleys, and peaceful ancient villages create the feeling that you are living in a world not yet rushed by urgency. Many Americans say that Georgia gives them a very special sense of freedom. No need to spend much money, no need to explain their choices, just living in the right rhythm and true to their own nature. Georgia does not try to become the easiest place to live, but a place that allows you to live most authentically. And sometimes, just 1 visa-free year in such a space is enough to change how a person sees freedom, life, and themselves. 1 year without a visa is not just a policy, but a span of time long enough for you to truly live. If you had a full 12 months without counting days, would you use it to keep running or to stop? 3. Mexico. Close to the U.S., easy living, real living. Mexico is a country that many Americans have known for a long time, and many have even visited a few times in their lives. Yet not everyone truly understands why it has become a long-term destination for millions of Americans. Mexico is not a distant dream, nor a decision to cut everything off and start over. It is close, familiar, and most importantly, easy to step into, as if life here does not require you to become a different person in order to be accepted. Americans can stay in Mexico for up to 180 days without a visa, and for many, that period is long enough to live like a local rather than a tourist. 6 months without pressure, without racing against deadlines. Enough for you to understand whether a place truly suits you or not. And if you want to stay longer, Mexico is one of the few countries with many legal, clear pathways for foreigners to settle long-term. Not because the laws are loose, but because Mexico understands that some people are simply searching for a life that is easier to breathe. Life in Mexico brings a very clear sense of lightness. With about $1,000 to $1,500 per month, you can live well in many different cities, from the peaceful Mérida to culturally rich Oaxaca, to coastal towns where time slows down day by day. Money is no longer an obsession at the end of each month. You eat out often, shop for fresh food at local markets, live in a sufficiently comfortable home, and still feel that you are living a proper life, not constantly calculating just to survive. There was a comment under a video about Mexico that once said this: "I moved to Mexico for the money, but stayed for the life." In the US, I always felt like I was running, but here, everything waits for me. Just one short sentence, yet it accurately reflects the experience of many Americans who ended up staying longer than their original plans. Healthcare in Mexico is one of the factors that completely changes how Americans see it. Modern private hospitals, skilled doctors, clear procedures, and costs that are only a small fraction of those in the United States. Some people do not live in Mexico, yet still fly here for dental work, surgery, or full health checkups. Healthcare in Mexico is no longer a heavy financial decision, but returns to its true nature, caring for people when they need it. When it comes to safety, Mexico is not a single color. There are areas foreigners should avoid, but there are also many cities where American communities have lived stably for many years. Those who stay long-term understand that safety does not come from denying reality, but from choosing the right place to live, understanding the surrounding environment, and respecting local rhythms. Mexico is not more dangerous than the world. It simply requires you to live more consciously. Mexican culture is vividly present in everyday life. Food is not just for eating, but for connecting people. Festivals happen year-round, music flows through small streets, and people are not afraid to express their emotions. Mexico does not try to be perfect. It is real, noisy, warm, and sometimes a little chaotic. But it is precisely this truth that makes many Americans feel alive again as human beings, not just as roles within a machine. Mexico is not a place to escape from the United States, but a place where you can live more easily without losing yourself. For many Americans, it is not a dramatic revolution, but simply a small enough shift that life stops pushing back against them every day. And sometimes, that alone is enough to stay. Mexico is not perfect, but it is very real, and that is exactly what keeps people there. Do you think you need a perfect place, or just a place that lets you breathe easier each day? 2. Panama. When a country operates like a system already designed. In 2020, as the world was shaken by the pandemic, global supply chains were breaking down and many countries fell into chaos. There was one place that continued to operate almost without interruption: the Panama Canal. More than 5% of global trade still passes through here each year, and even in the most difficult moments, Panama maintained a rare stability. For many Americans, this was the first time they truly took notice of Panama, not as a tourist destination, but as a place where things kept functioning while the rest of the world was in turmoil. Panama does not impress with glamour, but with a strangely familiar feeling. The official currency here is the US dollar. The banking system operates under international standards, and procedures for foreigners are clear and predictable. For Americans, moving to Panama does not feel like leaving everything behind to start over, but rather like stepping into another version of life, one where the surrounding system supports you instead of making everything more complicated each day. There are mornings in Panama that feel very similar to those in the United States, yet also very different. You stop by the neighborhood supermarket, push your cart past familiar shelves, pay in US dollars without needing to exchange money or recalculate. Then on the way home, pause at a small cafe where no one urges you to hurry. In those very ordinary moments, many Americans suddenly realize that what they lack is not more money, but a living system with less friction, where small tasks do not drain their energy day after day. Life in Panama flows gently. The cost of living is significantly lower than in the United States, especially if you choose to live outside central Panama City. Many Americans choose quieter areas, where homes are spacious, traffic is light, and all essential needs are within close reach. In Panama, you do not have to trade comfort for lower costs. The two exist side by side in a very natural way. Healthcare is one of the biggest reasons Panama has become a familiar destination for American retirees and long-term remote workers. Modern international hospitals, well-trained doctors, many of whom speak English, and clear, efficient medical procedures. One American who lived here for more than 10 years put it very simply: "I did not come to Panama to find a place cheaper than the United States. I came because I wanted a place where life does not push back against me every day." That sentence is repeated in many different forms by countless people who have chosen to stay. Safety in Panama does not come from a sense of strict control, but from long-term stability. Politics are relatively steady, with few extreme fluctuations, and especially little exposure to severe natural disasters such as major earthquakes or hurricanes. For Americans who are used to living in constant preparation for the worst, Panama brings a very clear sense of reassurance, without needing to be spoken. Panamanian culture reflects its geographic position, a crossroads. North America, South America, Europe, and the Caribbean meet here, creating a diverse but unstressed society. You can have an American-style breakfast, a Latin lunch, and Caribbean music at night, all within the same neighborhood. And at the center of it all is the Panama Canal, not only a world-famous engineering marvel, but a symbol of how this country operates, quietly, efficiently, and persistently. Panama does not try to become the cheapest, the most beautiful, or the most exciting place. Panama chooses to become a place where everything works properly. And for many Americans, after years of living in a system that constantly demands they push harder just to maintain their position, finding a place where life does not continuously force them into tension can be the greatest change of all. Panama is not a place to escape, but a place to live within a system that finally stands on the side of human beings. Panama does not overwhelm you, but makes you feel that everything runs smoothly. If life no longer pushes back against you every day, what would you use that energy for? 1. Costa Rica. Slow living and happiness, not to escape, but to return. There is one fact that always makes Americans pause and reflect when it comes to Costa Rica. Since 1948, this country has completely abolished its military. Instead of pouring money into weapons and conflict, Costa Rica chose to invest in education, healthcare, and quality of life. Nearly 8 decades later, that decision has created a society very different from the rest of Central America, a place where tension does not seem to be the default state of human life. Americans come to Costa Rica not carrying dreams of getting rich quickly or achieving dramatic life changes. They come because they are tired. Tired of pressure, of packed schedules, of the feeling that they always have to run faster just to avoid being left behind. Costa Rica does not promise to make you richer, but it gives you something many Americans have lost for a very long time: calmness in everyday life. Life here unfolds at a naturally slow pace. No one rushes you, and no one makes you feel that you are not doing enough. Mornings may begin with birdsong instead of car horns. Afternoons end with sudden rainforest showers, followed by clear skies as if nothing had happened. People live so close to nature that nature is no longer a weekend destination, but part of daily life. Many Americans say the first time they realized they were truly living in Costa Rica was not when they saw the forests or the sea, but when they sat drinking their morning coffee without glancing at the clock and without feeling guilty about it. What is special is that Costa Rica's healthcare system is extremely solid. Many Americans initially see it only as a place to vacation, but then stay longer because of the sense of security in knowing that their health is well cared for without facing overwhelming bills. In Costa Rica, going to the doctor is no longer a financial calculation, but simply a normal part of life. In a place where healthcare is no longer tied to money anxiety, many Americans realize they begin caring for their bodies earlier, not out of fear of illness, but because they finally feel they deserve to be healthy. Safety in Costa Rica does not come from high fences or heavy police presence, but from the very structure of its society. A country without a military, one that does not cultivate a mindset of confrontation, often creates people who are less aggressive, less suspicious, and more trusting. Foreigners here are not seen as targets, but as people searching for a life that suits them, just like many locals. And then there is Pura Vida. At first, many Americans think it is just a casual greeting, a cute tourism slogan, but after living here long enough, they realize it is a true philosophy of life. Live simply, live kindly, and do not make things more complicated than they need to be. Costa Rica is not for those who want to move fast, but it is an ideal place for those who are finally ready to slow down. Perhaps what makes Costa Rica most special is not that it gives you a different life, but that it gives you the chance to stop and ask yourself, why did I ever think living exhausted was normal? Costa Rica is different not because it is the cheapest, the most convenient, or the closest to the United States, but because it reminds people that a lighter life is not a luxury, but something humans have always had the right to choose. Costa Rica does not teach you how to succeed faster, but how to live more lightly. If living slowly is not moving backward, but returning, are you ready? At some point in life, everyone asks themselves, what am I living for? And is this life becoming too heavy? The places you have just heard about are not meant for escape, nor for leaving everything behind. They simply remind us that this world is far wider than what we endure every day. When people are placed into a different rhythm of life, lighter and slower, they do not become lazy, but more aware of what they truly need. And perhaps the greatest inspiration is not how far you go, but the moment you realize you have always had the right to choose a life that is kinder to yourself.